At the beginning of the movie recaps, we see the princess held hostage in the palace. When he wakes up, he tries to leave this room, but he can't, because the door was locked. Now she understands that she is being held hostage here. She remembers falling out after she felt something then. Later, 2 guards enter the princess's room. After seeing them, he pretends to be asleep, but in reality she was faking it. When one of the guards tries to approach her, the princess wakes up and attacks the guards. She successfully fought him and beat him up. She seems to be a good fighter. She knows how to fight well. This is why she fights them so well on her own. Later, after beating them up, she locks them up and runs away. He will come out later. Arriving in another room, he sees from the window that Julius, a prince from another town, locked up the princess's entire family. Also included are the princess's parents, king, queen, and younger sister. Later we witness the previous scene. The wedding of Prince Julius and this princess was to take place here. Because he was not a good man, she did not want to marry him. For this reason, he runs away from there on the wedding day. So Julius feels so bad, so he decided to take revenge on them today. He needs the princess at any cost because he wants to become the king of this city. And that is only possible after marrying the princess. So becoming king was really easy for Julius, because the princess has no brothers. Later, a guard with an iron mask over his face enters the princess's room. After seeing him, the princess hides in the bathtub and stops breathing in the water. The guard comes to check, and when he makes sure no one is there, he starts to leave from there. Later, the princess walks away from there. Meanwhile, the guard looks at her and takes her into custody. He starts fighting the guards for his defense. Later, a massive fight between the princess and the guard. In this fight, the princess defeats the guard and kills him. Later, the princess recalls a past memory that her father, the king, always wanted a son. Later we see a woman from the past who was the princess teacher and master. She taught the princess everything, including fencing, self-defense, combat, and many other skills. The princess's sister was to be born at this time. His mother informs the teacher that her father, the king, does not like to learn swordsmanship and combat, because they believe that these activities are best left to men and not to women. While thinking about the memories from the past, he walks from there and reaches the room. 2 guards come and she fights them. He fights valiantly, and after killing them, he comes out. Julius later sends an older guard to check on the princess. He orders him to check whether she is ready for marriage or not. The elder guard does not go to find the princess. Rather, he sends a guard who is quite healthy. A healthy guard doesn't want to go up, but the head guard makes him go. On the other side, the princess was running and hiding from everyone. After seeing the healthy guard, she hangs from the window outside. Later, the guard moves on from there when he doesn't find the princess. Later, after returning to the room, the princess leaves. Secretly, the princess takes the sword under the bed when she arrives. After some time, he starts to remember his past time. She remembers how well her teacher taught her swordsmanship, and she gave this sword to the princess as she was quite pleased with it. After climbing, the health guard's condition deteriorates and becomes exhausted. When the princess comes out of her room, she hears some noises. She later sees a hole in the room when she notices that Julius and Moira, his friend, were there alone in the room. This suggests that the prince and his friend are in a relationship. After she pierced the wall with her sword when the princess was about to kill Julius, the prince's guards arrive at his room and inform him that the king has called him. He then goes to the king to listen to him. From the narrow path in the wall, the princess goes to the next room. Later, the princess is attacked by a guard wearing a power suit. She fights him bravely. Meanwhile, the two have a great battle. Later, after burning his body, the princess throws him down from the window. Julius stood where the guard had thrown. Later, a health guard comes and informs him, "I looked everywhere for the princess, but I couldn't find her." Hearing this, he became very angry with his senior guard. He orders him to leave immediately and search the entire palace. After saying that, he goes from there. Later, Moira becomes suspicious of the guards, that there is surely someone who knows all the ways of this palace. As a result, everyone starts making fun of her and laughing at her. After her insult, Moira is quite ragged. For this reason, he attacks the head guard with his chain. He will kill him terribly. This chain has 2 blades that can be controlled by Moira's fingers. Later, he orders all the guards to search the palace. The princess, who also saw everything as she stood there, he runs away trying to save his life. Because the guards were coming to search the palace, she is later surrounded by numerous guards but unable to stop. She kills many guards to protect herself. She later continues on, but is soon stopped by many guards. Later, she fights all the guards alone. but he gets quite injured in this fight. Later, she spills the pearls from her broken necklace onto the stairs. As a result, all the guards chasing her fall on the stairs. She later flees from there after handing over their bodies. After catching the guard, he falls off the long legs with the help of the widow. The princess has a fight with the guard there, but ends up killing him and leaves. Later, he sees a long cloth hanging from the window, and she hastily jumps up holding the cloth. With her help, he begins to descend. He descends a little and enters a room with a window. He gets hurt enough, he begins to bandage himself sadly. We see that her father was preparing to forcefully marry the princess to Juliet. She tells her dad, "I don't like Julius and I don't like marrying him." She tells him that I want to become a warrior. The king tries to hear this. He tells her, "Don't forget you're a girl, and it is not good for you to learn to fight and sword. Listen carefully to one thing, that I will arrange for you to be married to Julius and become king of this city. Despite the fact that you are my daughter, I had no expectations. You are quite selfish to answer me like that." The princess is quite upset to hear this. In the present tense, as she is bandaging her, someone suddenly enters her room. And when she heard his sound, she becomes fully conscious and attacks him. She later realizes that he is not a guard but her teacher. She feels quite happy to see her there. He later falls to the floor after suffering many injuries. Later, he asks his teacher, "What are you doing here?" He tells her, "I came here to find you." He later takes her to bed and begins to bandage her wounds. Later, the princess asks her teacher what happened and what is going on here. She asked her teacher about it because she doesn't remember anything. He later tells her that one night Julius came after taking his guards to fight and attack us, but our people were not at all prepared to fight them. Julius is a cruel man who shows no mercy to anyone. He shows no mercy to anyone. He killed anyone and oppressed everyone mercilessly. When the princess hears this, she is quite sad and blames herself for being responsible for all this. Seeing this, her teacher told her that now was not the time for her to blame herself. Rather, it's time to be brave and save others. He later tells the princess that there is only one way to get out of this palace, and that is by water. After they get out of there, they move to the kitchen, and to see that Julio's guards were destroying and oppressing people everywhere. Later, 3 guards capture the woman and mistreat her. When they see this, they sneak up there and attack the guards. They tell the woman that there is a way out the back and you can run. Later, they fight the guard one by one. Apparently, they were pretty brave, so they killed the guards. Later, the last surviving guard arrives to attack them. But after a while, Mario arrives there and kills him with his chain. So the guard does not approach the princess and the teacher. She later fights them, and the princess and teacher fight her bravely. Later, Moira wraps the princess in her chain and hangs her. Later, the teacher fights with Moira to save the princess. The princess was supposed to die from suffocation. Before the princess could die, soon the teacher will beat her. He pushes her away, and as a result, the princess is freed from her bonds. Later, the teacher lights a fire around Moira's 4 sides, so Moira couldn't stop them and they can run away. Later, the teacher asks the princess to go from there alone. But the princess denies it because she doesn't want to go without her teacher. The teacher tries to explain it to her to run away after agreeing with me. It is necessary for you to leave because you must preserve your family. After I'm alone here, I will face Moira. Later, the princess agrees and is ready to go from there. Coming out of that waterway, she ends up in the prison where her family was imprisoned. Later, the princess sees 3 guards watching over her family. A few of them drank wine and others played games. Later, the princess goes there and starts taking a glass of wine. After attacking them, he starts killing them. He later fights the guards and ends up in prison, freeing his family. After seeing her fight the guards, her father is quite shocked. While she was taking her family after rescuing them, many other guards arrive there and faints after attacking them. Later, when the princess wakes up, she finds herself bound in front of Julius, and her family was also with her. Moira will bring the princess's teacher with her in a moment. Here the princess tells Julio that I think of you all day and night. She informs him, I think the different ways to kill you. And Julius, I await the day when I hold your pumping heart in my hand. When Julius hears this, he becomes quite annoyed and says, I will marry the princess's younger daughter, because I'll be king if I do too. He later orders his guards to kill the princess. After hearing Juliet's words, the princess hints to the teacher. He tells her to take her little sister out the back door, as the princess fights and distracts everyone. After a while, the teacher runs after the princess's younger sister. Later, the guard throws the princess out of the window. He falls right into the water and passes out after falling into the water. He later regains his senses and remembers that he must save his family, and he has to fight and he has to save the whole city. When he remembers all this, he cuts the rope from a piece of glass from the water. After he does that, he comes out of the water. Later, after handcuffing the princess's family, Julius takes them to a church. A large number of people were already there. In fact, he came here to marry the princess's younger sister, and orders to find the younger sister of the princess. Later, the princess comes to the palace where a guard was about to attack her. Meanwhile, we see that the princess's sister has been hidden under the law. When the guard approaches the statue, throw it at the guard. As a result, he will die in no time. Meanwhile, her teacher arrives and the princess is happy to see her. She later regrets marrying Julius so she wouldn't have to live through this day. 3 of them go from here. Later, the princess and the teacher bring the younger sister to the place where many of the weapons that are used in war have been placed. The princess and the teacher are ready after putting on their war suits, because the princess's sister liked this dress, so she is ready after wearing them. They later go after asking the younger sister to stay there. Meanwhile, the guards were finding the princess's younger sister, and later the princess and the teacher start fighting them. When Julius hears the princess's voice, he is shocked because he believes she died. He sends more soldiers to fight them. On the other side, the princess's younger sister secretly comes to the church. After he gets there, he frees the teacher's companion. Meanwhile, Julius sees her and takes her to her father's for the wedding. When the princess sees this, she becomes quite concerned, but they cannot stop. They fought each of the guards in a great way. After killing a few guards, the teacher begins to enter, but Moira along with the guards are standing there to block their way. The teacher fights with them, and in the meantime the teacher's companions arrive there. Everyone was fighting in the church and the princess is also trying to get inside the church. Meanwhile, Moira arrives there and stops her. He tries to scare the princess with his chain. In the church, Julius attacks the king. After seeing this, the teacher saves him and begins to fight Julius. On the other hand, the princess and Moira have a massive fight. Sometimes Moira dominates the princess and other times the princess dominates Moira. Later, the princess wraps Moira in her chain and hangs her there. After doing so, he pulls on the chain, and Moira dies as a result of suffocation. After he kills her, the princess goes inside and sees that Julius has attacked her teacher. She is quite hurt and the princess is quite sad after seeing this. She begins to cry because she thinks that her teacher, who fell and suffered injuries, could have died. After a while, the teacher's companion comes and takes her. Now only the princess and Julius remained in the church. Later, a fight begins between them. Julius attacks the princess's wounds and she is injured even more. He feels great pain and can no longer fight. Later, they exit the church in front of everyone. The princess sat on her knees before Juliet, and Julius held his sword at her neck. He told everyone, "I was your new king." Meanwhile, the princess remembers the words of her teacher who always tells her, "Be patient during the fight and focus only on the fight." Now he acts the same way, as Julius diverts his attention after seeing the princess fall silent. She immediately takes the sword from his hand and cuts off his head with a single attack. Because Julius wore a royal crown, it also falls when his head falls. After taking the crown, he goes to his father. The king, after putting on his crown, tells everyone that from now on, the new king of this place will be my daughter, the princess. Hearing this, everyone is happy. Later, when the princess sees her teacher alive, she is amazed and also happy. That's why he hugs her when he gets close. Meanwhile, a health guard arrives there and is happy to see the princess. He says, "Oh princess, you are here, thank God you were found. I found you everywhere." It was quite a funny scene and everyone started laughing. The movie recap ends with this happiness. Thanks for watching.